Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Um, many thanks, many thanks for joining us on this, the inaugural um, Aerotrac webinar. Um, this is a new initiative of ours, really to just try to help share um, as much as we possibly can about Aerotrac and what it does. Um, there's always going to be a little bit of a limit as to what we're going to be able to do and to cover uh, within any of these particular sessions. So today actually is a pretty practical hands-on session where we just kind of go through some of the real fundamental basics of Aerotrac, um, look at some of the tips and tweaks that you can make, which actually are a little bit more kind of admin orientated, and also take you just through some of the most useful common screens really. So hopefully a little bit of something for absolutely everybody. One thing that we have discovered over the years as we go into sites is that when we run this session, people who've been using the system for quite a long time all kind of go, I didn't realize it did that. Um, so yeah, hopefully you'll pick up something useful from this particular session. Um, it, just one thing is, it wasn't meant to be led by me. Actually, it was supposed to be being carried out by one of my colleagues, but unfortunately, his laptop died a death this morning, so I've had to step in at the very last minute. So hopefully, I can do this justice. Because obviously you've done all the preparations, but there you go. That's live TV for you. Um, okay, so with no further ado, I'll just share my screen because obviously you need to be able to see what it is that we're looking at. There's Andy. Um, and right, okay, so as I say, the purpose of this session really is just to go through some real fundamentals. So we'll start with some of the real basics. The obviously the most basic one of which is actually getting into Aerotrac itself. So as we go into the login screen, we'll see here at the top there's Aerotrac. We can see a version number here. That's quite important if you're doing kind of admin tasks or if you've got a problem with the application. Um, Aerotrac, like all software, is version and issue controlled. This is the very latest version of the software that we're looking at here, 250.29. So this is a beta release of what we're working on at this particular moment. But certainly from the point of view that if you've got a problem with Aerotrac, you're trying to get something fixed, the first and most important thing that we need to know is what the version number is, because obviously that tells us whether or not that's an issue that might already have been resolved. So what we have below is a company name. Uh, in this case, I'm going to be looking at my 250 demo database. That might say primary company. It might be the name of your company. It depends on how we've actually set up the database name. But basically, that's the database that you're actually looking at. The idea is actually you can have multiple databases, so you can have more than one company. Some people actually do have more than one database, more than one company that they're trading with at any given time. But on most sites, typically we have at least two databases. One is the primary company and the other one is a test company. And if you click on change company down here at the bottom, it will open up and show you all the other companies that you have access to. Now, you actually have the ability to create as many companies as you want from a test or training point of view. So if you want to have separate training companies, you can do that through a separate little application called the database administrator. Normally that's done by administrators rather than anybody. But the idea is that you can have multiple copies of your company. If you want to change the database, one thing, when you usually log in, what Aerotrac will do is it will pick up the last company that you were logged into. So if you're sharing a PC, you might have to be just a little bit careful there that you're in the right database, because if the person who was using the system before you was in a different database, then obviously it won't be the same. So you just need to check which company you're actually in. If I want to change to the test company, all I need to do is click here and go test company and then either select or just double click and you'll see the name change in the box here. If I then look in this here, I can see a list of all the users that we have set up in the system. So I'm going to log in as me. I'm going to put my password in, and then we go. And this takes us into our test company. Now, you know you're in the test company because it's got testing training at the bottom. Everything is all big and red. It also changes the name of the company. So instead of it being the primary company name, it's changed it to test company. So it's important that when you're creating a test database, to always choose it as a test company, because we have had instances where people have done that and they didn't realize that actually they were working in a training or test environment and were busy raising projects and purchase orders in the wrong database. Hence the reason why we make it all big and red. Okay. Yeah, I'm actually just going to log off from the test database and go into the primary database. So I've got two options here. If I quit, it will say, "Are you sure you want to quit?" If you say yes, that will basically take you right out of the application. I think it's quite important that if you're using, depending on how you're accessing Aerotrac, if you're, for example, getting into it through a remote desktop connection, it's probably a good idea to quit from the application, to go right out. But yeah, if you're just trying to swap databases and move to another database, then I would go no. I would simply log off, and that would take you back to the login screen, and I can now choose the main primary company and log in. And then I go. So this takes us to the main application. As you can see, there's a nice big pretty picture here. This picture will vary from organization to organization. This is the standard default one that we produce as Tracware, but it could be your own company logo. And actually, if I find time at the end, I might just show you how you can actually go and change that and personalize that to yourself. Quite often, when you're logging into Aerotrac, it runs a script and puts the corporate company logo into the menu background, but you can put a picture of your favorite aircraft or your car or your wife and children or whatever it may be in there, depending on what your preferences are. Okay, in terms of the main menu, it's a simple, straightforward menu structure here with all the various different modules. We'll talk about those a little bit more later on. But it's all kind of single click, so you don't need to double click anything. In fact, double clicking is a bit counterproductive actually, because it opens and closes. So typically it's just a single click to get in and provide access. So just let someone in there. Okay. Yeah, sorry, got a bit distracted there for a second. Right, so yeah, so that's our kind of main menu structure, and I'll go through that in a little bit more detail. I've got access to absolutely every single screen. Quite often you'll find that the access rights you have are limited. Basically, if you don't have access to a module or a screen or a tab within a screen, it just simply won't appear. Okay, so this is obviously a sort of fairly busy looking menu. If I click on this, you'll see it just opens up all the individual sections with all the screens, and there are quite a lot of them, I think it's fair to say. As you start to build that out, you'll see a scroll bar appearing here, so you can move up and down. There's the name of the company and the database you're in appears at the top here. And if you click on that, that will roll everything up. It refreshes the details, and also it just closes and tidies everything up. If you've, for example, just requested a new piece of or access to a module, so a module has just been included in, and you've been given access to it, and you can't see it, you may have to quit, but typically you don't have to. You should just be able to go in here and just click on that at the top there where your company name is, and that just refreshes all the data within the system. So it should pick up any new permissions that you've been given in relation to Aerotrac. Okay. Down at the bottom of the list is a favorites box. So if there's a particular function that you want to include, So, for example, I'm doing a lot of project estimating. I can click on that, drag and drop it, and just pop it into the box at the bottom. If it turns out your job role changes and you don't need that anymore, then you can just drag and remove it, and basically just click it anywhere, and that should remove it. There we go. Go away. Do you want to move it? Yes, I do. So yeah, they're just little, basically very quick links to the most commonly used screens. Really, nothing is ever more than about 2 or 3 steps away, so it's not massive, but it's helpful. In addition to this main application, so as you log in, this is the application that Aerotrac takes you to. But sat behind this is what we call the administrator module. So Aerotrac comes in 2 halves. So behind this, we have a separate administrator module. Not everybody has access to this, certainly not all of it. And in here are a whole bunch of different functions which are largely to do with setups and admin functions, basically. Some of the more esoteric roles, some of the more discrete roles, the functionality tends to be in here, so stuff related to finance. And I mentioned before about being able to get in and out of screens and see them. That's all done in this administrative section here, where we've got a security setting. In here is where we set all the individual users up, and each user can be assigned a user role, and those user roles can be seen through this user permission screen here. So we've got a whole bunch of different admin functions. So I might be the production controller, and you'll see that people have the ability to view, add, edit, delete, authorize, post, and occasionally there are some other kind of miscellaneous functions that they can carry out. So, for example, here, the miss permission allows somebody the ability to unaction flight bookings. So they're kind of special permissions that are kind of over and above. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of functionality which all has to be set up. But if you find that there's a screen that you can see other people have got, and you feel that you need access to that but don't have it, you would just need to talk to your administrator and they would provide access for you. This isn't something that's generally available to everybody. Only the admin people typically control this, but it controls it down to a module, screen, and even in some instances tab level. I'll explain what I mean by tabs in a minute. Okay. If I return then back to the main application, I can flick between the 2 applications by just clicking here. So you can see I'm in the main admin module. If I click on the Aerotrac module, it will take me back into Aerotrac, back into the admin, back into Aerotrac. So I just flick between the 2. Okay, so a little bit now about the screen configuration. So if we just go to materials, and I'm going to go to sourcing and RFQs, I can either do that through here, through the main menu, or you can see I've got a favorite box down here. So I'll just click on that, and that'll actually just take me to the main purchase order, repair order screen. We've tried to make the formatting of the screen as consistent as we possibly can. So most of the layouts are pretty much the same. So in the top left hand corner, you'll always find these little combo boxes that basically say, right, okay, what am I looking for? I'm looking for purchase orders for stock or for a repair order. I can find the number of all the purchase orders that have been raised at the moment. I can either narrow it down to everything that's just live, or I can go back and go in and look at absolutely everything. Typically, if you type in something like purchase order 10001, which obviously was the first purchase order that I ever raised back in 2006, it will still open up, even though it's technically closed, and I had it flagged as live. As long as it recognizes the record, it will normally just open up. Okay. So if I go in and put in purchase order 10333, you'll find that here's my purchase order here, which is the most recent purchase order that I've raised. In terms of other information, well, searching is one of the key things. So if you can't find the purchase order that you're looking for using this drop down combo, then we have a search field here. So this allows you to search by supplier. So if I was to go in here and just type in Pratt, for example, this will show me all the purchase orders that are raised against Pratt and Whitney. If you want to sort of data sort things, if you just click in the column, you see this is going from the oldest to the latest. If I click here in the order number box, it'll data sort alphanumerically based on the way that Microsoft does things. And you'll see that obviously the purchase order is kind of reversed. And so the last order that I raised against Pratt's was RO10323. If I can't find it for whatever reason, and you might have literally hundreds of suppliers in your system, what you can do is you can sort, if you know part of the number, if you know part of the name of the company. So if I was to go in here, for example, and I'm looking for purchase orders for rotable supplies, for example, and for whatever reason I can't find them, if I just put a little asterisk in here to do a wildcard search and then just put SUP, it should find then any supplier name with SUP in the name or in the purchase order number or in the date raised or whatever. And you can see here you can filter that search by either the order number or the date raised, so whatever it is that you're looking for. If you know that it was done around a specific date or a particular month or a particular year, periods, that's a common one for filtering on. Yeah, basically it's just a more detailed search, which instead of just picking a very specific record, it's just picking part of the number, part of the name, part of the description, whatever it may be. Okay, and that search filter is available on nearly all screens. Okay, on most screens you'll also see this little memo pad here. So memo pads basically are just little post-it notes, and actually anybody who's got access to the screen can edit and add these. So if I just wanted to go in here and click and say welcome to webinar, oh, I actually spelled that right, and then just click add memo. You'll see date and timestamps, putting the username in there, and then it just glows red to indicate that yeah, there's basically something there. Okay. Right. Excuse me. I've just noticed I've managed to get myself out of order, but never mind. I shall plow on. Okay. So yeah, that's the memo pad. In terms of the structure of the screens and the consistency of it, over on the right hand side here, you've got the exit button, which will just take you out. There's also the save and cancel button. And typically there's also a shortcut to other screens, which we'll look at that in a second. Down in the bottom left hand corner, you'll find the add new or edit options. There's a close and cancel function. So there's an auto close function in Aerotrac actually, which will just close everything out automatically, assuming that everything has been done. I'll run through that in a second. And then down at the bottom right hand corner, you'll see there's the ability to preview and print things, and also for certain screens the ability to email. So what it will do, it will pick up with any MAPI compliant email utility. You'll see here, if I was to click on email, it will just simply open my Outlook and start to build an email for me. Preparing an email, it'll ask you, do you want to send? And then you'll see it just builds the email for me. There's a PDF attachment in here, along with all the details of the order that goes into there. Okay. And from a preview point of view, everything is all kind of pretty much designed to print out on either kind of US letter / A4 paper print size. I think there's a couple of reports that will print onto A3. I think there's one report actually that prints onto A3. Everything else is all just pretty much the standard format here. Okay. So yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I've just got a little out of order here in relation to where I was supposed to be. I should have followed the script that I wrote for myself and spent half an hour doing. But there you go. Yeah, one thing is that the screen sizes can be changed. So actually, you can just hit the maximize button here, and that will make it bigger. So it will go to full screen, or you can take it back to sort of half size screen. You can move it. That doesn't change the size of the font. All it does is it changes access. if you've got a sort of fairly detailed list view of something, so there's like a lot of parts within here, obviously the bigger the screen, the more information that you can see on the order. But yeah, most things can just be kind of configured back down to a certain size and pull back based on the resolution, obviously, that you've got set on your individual PC. Just checking, making sure I've not missed anything. Screen size, option, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, one other thing. There's a facility within Aerotrac called linked documents. So in here, for example, you'll see we've got a little box here, which is just glowing red. Essentially, it's just giving the ability to take documents and link that to that record. So, for example, I might print this purchase order, store the digital PDF copy of the purchase order, and then provide myself access to it through the linked documents here. So it's just linking to a server somewhere, and if I preview the document, there it is in its PDF form. That's particularly useful when, for example, if you're taking this order and you're going to just need to resize the screen here a bit. Excuse me a minute, because I've lost my edit button. If I click on the edit thing there, a lot of the forms in Aerotrac are issue and revision controlled, particularly on some of the more discrete technical documents. But the purchase orders, for example, are all issue controlled. So if I was going to create a new issue of this, I'll say yes. You'll see the issue number there changes to issue 2. And we've got a whole brand new issue then. Aerotrac doesn't, for most documents in Aerotrac that are issue controlled, it doesn't store a copy of the previous. So it's quite important, I think, that if you do change the issue number, you save a copy of it and probably put it into the linked documents so that you've got a version, an image of what the original version was. If I want to go in and make some changes to that, so for example, I just want to add something to the purchase order, I can go in here and say standard terms and conditions apply, and that's going to populate itself on the purchase order, printed out. If I save that now, so when you save, you get 3 options: yes, no, or cancel. No will simply allow you to go back to where you already were, and you can just re-edit. So if I wanted to add another item to the purchase order or something like that, or add an additional comment or change a date, then you can do that. Otherwise, it's just a case of, well, yes, I want to save it. If you choose cancel, and there is a bit with Microsoft Word, I think, where no and cancel are kind of the other way around. Yeah, there is a danger that if you hit cancel, it will completely change everything that you'd already done and previously saved. Okay, it will just take you back to where you were. So at the very start, when you hit the edit button. So obviously, if you just added a brand new purchase order and added 30 lines to it and then go back and hit cancel, you will lose all those 30 lines. If you haven't saved it, they will go. So it's a mistake that everybody makes at some point, but generally speaking, hopefully you only do it the once. So I'm going to go yes, I'm going to save that. And then if I want to just preview it, save a copy, put it into the linked documents, and away we go. Okay. Couple of other things really. Close and cancel. So most of the documents can be closed and cancelled. You can do that manually. So you can just go in here and say, right, I actually want to cancel or close it. And I'll have the options here of doing that. You shouldn't have to do that. Okay. There's in the admin module, which I can get access to down here. You'll see that in the miscellaneous section here, I've got some administration tools, one of which is this auto close option, which closes up purchase orders, sales orders, projects, and if you've got them, manufacturing work orders. Now, this will not just auto shut everything. Okay, it will only shut things automatically that are completely finished within an Aerotrac. So, for example, purchase orders. If you haven't processed a purchase invoice against that purchase order, it will not auto close. If you've got outstanding work in progress against a project, so you haven't invoiced that to a customer yet, or there's just some extra costs which have been added, then the project will not auto close. So this is just a very useful feature from an admin point of view, but it's limited, and it's done for that purpose, because if it won't auto close, then there's a reason why it won't auto close that really someone needs to go and investigate. Okay, so I'll just go back to the main application again. One of the other things that you'll find across Aerotrac, not on every screen, but on certain screens, is the ability to clone, which basically is just to create a direct copy of whatever it is that you're looking at, and clone it to someone else. It could, in this case, just be the same purchase order cloned to the same supplier or a completely different supplier. But it is a direct copy, so you have to be a little bit careful when you're cloning, because it literally is a straight copy one to the next, and some of that may or may not be applicable. So you need to go in and make sure you change anything that needs tweaking. Okay. Right. Print emails. One last thing, really, just in relation to this. On most screens, you'll also find a shortcut. And we've got a couple of kinds of shortcuts. Sometimes we have an actual proper shortcut like we've got here going directly to the stock inquiry screen. So in this case, this is my light assembly. And if I click through, you'll see this takes me through to the stock inquiry screen. The stock inquiry screen may vary depending on what version of Aerotrac you've got and what modules you've got switched on. Most people are seeing the stock details like this. Some of the people who've got the advanced parts trading module switched on will see it like this. For those that don't have the advanced parts trading, that summary tab appears down at the end here, and it's not quite so busy, shall we say. There's not as much information on there. And we'll explore the stock details screen again a little bit more in a minute. Okay. So yeah, lots of shortcuts, lots of different things, lots of ways to work in relation to that. Going back to the main menu, one of the other key features within Aerotrac is what we call the status board. So the status board basically is a very useful utility. We've taken basically the most critical reports, the most functional reports, if you like, within Aerotrac that affect the day-to-day operation of the business, and we put them into a graphical interface that you can actually use to do something. So I've gone in here. Sorry, I did that by clicking down here in the status board section. You'll tend to find that once you've got the status board open, every time you log into Aerotrac, it will automatically be there. So there's a bunch of different tabs that you may or may not have access to, depending on what permissions you've been granted. You can, depending on how many of them you've got, set your own personal preference. So I'm going to say that my personal preference here is to always have the stock tab open, because that's the one that I use most of all. But you'll see there's a whole series of different options that you can set, which affect basically how the data appears within the report, basically like filters, really. So if I go to the stock tab here, you'll see that the stock tab is essentially, this is just showing me everything that I need that's fallen below my safety stock level for a particular warehouse. So if I want to go off and buy some of this stuff, then what I can do is I can just click on this button here, and I can tick some boxes here, and it will go off and it'll create a purchase order for me. Or in this case, it won't, because the supplier needs approving. So yeah, can't do that. So okay, if I want to be able to maybe report that back to someone and just let them know, look, I've got a problem, I need to order these items. One of the features that we have in Aerotrac is where you see all the data in a list view like this. So basically there's just a list of parts or a list of projects or whatever it may be. If you click in the top line and then just go Control E, what Aerotrac will do is it will build you an Excel spreadsheet that basically is a direct copy of whatever it is that you're looking at. So a formatted Excel spreadsheet, which is essentially the same as what the information is on the screen. So a handy little thing, particularly if you're doing invoicing and stuff like that. Yeah, it's just a great way of being able to snap data and grab it and pull it in. One of the things that's unique to the status board as well is that you can move the columns around. So for example, if you wanted to put the preferred supplier first, you can just move it there. That stays there, but it only stays there for you. It doesn't affect anybody else. It's unique to your own user access. Okay. So yeah, I mean, a couple of little things just in relation to this. There's an auto refresh tick box here. Basically, that means that every so often, 30 minutes or so, Aerotrac will just auto refresh the information on the screens, so you don't have to go out and go back in to refresh it. It's not a live feed, by the way. It just does it basically, I think every 30 minutes, I think I'm right in saying, if you've got the auto refresh ticked on. Okay. You can reset the window. So if you want to reset the whole of Aerotrac and just get it to sit back in the middle of the screen and be the normal size, you can hit that reset window button and that will push everything. And if you want to hide the status board, you just simply hide the status board. And there it is. Okay. Probably the one last thing I'd say, just in relation to that, is particularly in relation to the status board, is that there's a whole bunch of drill downs within Aerotrac, which basically means that if you double click on something, it will take you somewhere. So you'll see that if I want to interrogate that part there, I just need to double click on it and it will take me through to the stock details screen, where I can sit there and I can investigate whether or not I've got anything on order against any other warehouse. What stock have I already got? Have I got any demands? Is anything allocated? What's my price for the part? All sorts of different bits of information, basically, which is what you can get. So whether there's a shortcut up here or there's you're using the drill down functionality, there's a lot of visibility within Aerotrac. One of the probably the key parts of it really actually is just learning to navigate around. It's not always clear that there is a drill down on certain functions, so it's well worth, if you're looking at a line, just double clicking on it to see if it takes you somewhere. And that's particularly the case when you're looking at stuff on the status board. Okay, bear with me one moment. I'll just take a drink, if I may. Thank you. Just checking and making sure I've covered everything. Making sure I've got all of that. Yep, all good. Right. Sorry about that. Just making sure I've not missed anything. Right. Okay. Obviously, one of the big things from a software, any software really, is the reporting functions. So obviously, we have a separate reports module here. The reports module has, I think, if you've got all the modules, it's got something like between 300 and 400 different reports. So there are a lot of them. Most of the reports actually have been given to us by the customers. We came up with maybe a dozen. You know, the rest of them I think have all been pretty much customers asking for this, that, or the other. And as part of the support network side of things, one of the things that obviously we try to encourage is for people to tell us what they need in terms of reports, and in particular that reflects on this thing here on the right hand side, which are the filters. I'll explain what I mean. So typically when the first time you ever go into the reports, you'll probably find that there's just a blank tab here, which is the favorites tab. Obviously, because there are so many reports, rather than having to go into each and every single one, and basically there's a module for each and every different one of the modules that you have. Rather than go in and have to choose it, you can just select them and make them your favorites. So for example, you'll see here anything basically that's marked with a star, that's been flagged as a favorite. So I can take a report, so the purchase and order and repair order register, I can add that to my favorites. Or if I find I'm not using it, I can, and it's getting too busy on the favorite screen, I can just remove it. Okay. So obviously, all these different reports do different things. There's a little bit of narrative down at the bottom here that explains what that report is and does. Quite often, though, you'll find you probably just need to run it to have a look and see what sort of information that it produces. Now, all the reports are all pretty much configured to go again on A4 or letter size paper, so that there's not a huge amount of scope in terms of the data that you can print. But that said, down on the at the bottom here, obviously you've got the ability to preview the report, but you can also export it. So you can either export it to a CSV file, which will open in Excel, or probably better is to be imported into Excel, because Microsoft, as we know, can sometimes do funny things with numbers, particularly when it thinks it's got a dash in it and it thinks that's a sum rather than a hyphen. But there is also these days an ability to export to Excel, and also now in recent versions the ability to email the report to yourself or to someone. So if there's a particular report that you want to send to someone, you can just send it from here. So I've mentioned here about the filters on the right hand side, and obviously this is kind of really where the clever bit comes in. So if I go to for example match 03, all our reports are numbered. Sometimes you'll remember the number, sometimes you'll remember the name. If you just data sort, you can data sort by the title. That's the way I tend to do most of mine, or data sort if you can remember the number by that. So it's whatever sticks really. But obviously if you add them to your favorites, that just makes it that much easier. So if I go to my match 3 report here, you see down on the right hand side here a whole bunch of options, basically filters, because obviously if you've got literally tens of thousands of purchase orders, you just want to narrow down what purchase orders you want to look at. So the idea obviously is you can then focus either by purchase order number, date, supplier short name, part numbers, whatever it is that you're looking at. Okay. Typically when you go into here, and this does depend a little bit on the size of your database, these tabs up here, match specific data, search, in between, they might be in a different order. On some of the bigger older databases we've moved them around, because actually when you go into the field it will actually start searching the database almost straight away, and you'll see that if I click down in here it actually starts to auto populate with data that's real. Do you know what I mean? It's not some spurious number or spurious description. It is a field within the database that you're looking for. If for whatever reason you can't find, and sometimes particularly with this you have to be very, very specific, what you can do is you can use the search function instead. So if I, for example, was to go into here and put in a wildcard search and then go 0-009, 009, and go enter and then preview, what this will show me is all the purchase I've raised where the part number has got -009 in it. So there we go, we can see AS3209. Now obviously this is showing me a lot of purchase orders dated back to years and years ago. So if I want to get rid of that, I'll just close the print and preview and it takes me back to where I was. The reports module, by the way, actually opens as a separate module. So like you can have Aerotrac open, the admin module open, and also a separate reports module open at the same time. Now I might here say, right, I'm only interested in looking at anything that I've not yet received. So I'm looking for part numbers with -009 in it where I've not received that. So if I go back to the match specific data field here and then go equals, you'll see Aerotrac puts nothing in there. And essentially what that would do is that's exactly what this would do. This would tell me any purchase order that I've raised where I don't have a GRN for that part number. So if I preview that, what I'll get is nothing. And that basically tells me, okay, either the part number's wrong or I've received everything that's got a part number with that in it. So it's a way of being able to configure and just play around with whatever it is that you need to do in order to find it. If I go back and I was just to remove that -009 and then just go show me all my purchase orders where I've got a GRN date of nothing, and I preview that, this is basically just going to show me all my outstanding purchase orders dated back to right back in 2006. Now obviously a lot of those orders, they're no longer open. This is looking at every order I've ever raised, so I can just down in here change that and just say I'm only interested in anything that's still open. So if I preview that, it will now just take me through, and you'll see here's only the ones that obviously that's still quite old. Probably need to go and clear them up. Obviously I've not changed any of my data since, or cleaned up my data since 2016, so lesson to myself, I need to go and sort that out. But yeah, it's quite powerful. Some of the reports in Aerotrac are a little one-dimensional, quite often you'll find that you do some reporting and then you have to go and run another report and you go another run a report. One of the big things though is if you choose to export to Excel or CSV, it will not only put what's on the printed report, it will put all the information that's in the filters in here. So going back to what I mentioned before about the support side of things, one of the most common things that we receive are requests to add filters to the existing reports. Okay, so if you find that there's something that you need, a date range or this or that, there is a date range obviously down the bottom as well, and more often than not you'll tend to find that there's a date range in here, which again you can also do through here. So I can go between, I'm only interested in purchase orders from 1st of January 2023 to the 31st of December 2023. So yeah, you can look between dates, you can filter, and you can use any combination of these three to be able to give you the report that you want. And then, as I say, if you export it to Excel or CSV, it will put all the data basically that you've filtered in here. So it's much more expensive than just using the printed report. Okay. So hopefully that's useful and sort of gives you a good idea. Just one last thing as well, you've got some other criteria in here. So sometimes you want to do everything except that one. I want to do everything but not that, in which case you can use the not feature. And then you've got the less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to functions as well. Great for trying to do stuff up only until after a certain date, for example. So a really good example of one that I use a lot in relation to that with our existing customers would probably be one of my favorite reports, stock 16. What I can do with stock 16 is categorize whether it's slow moving stock or not. So you can do that based on this movement category filter down in here. This will tell me what my slow moving stock is. And I can also then limit it and say I'm not interested then in anything but a batch date that's equal to or earlier than, later than, let's say the 31st of December 2022, and preview that. And that will just limit basically the data you're looking at. So hopefully that's useful and obviously gives you a nice value of how much your non-moving, oh dear, there's quite a lot of non-moving stock there. Happy to say this is completely fictitious, so don't worry about any of that. It's all nonsense. Okay, but yeah, lots and lots, and all I can do with the reports, because there are so many of them, is just encourage you to experiment. You know, we as part of the support we'll try to help you and push you in the right direction with reports, but quite often sometimes you just have to play with them to see what sort of information it gives you. And I think a key thing is to bear in mind that quite often these reports aren't necessarily going to give you exactly what it is that you're looking for. They're written around giving whoever it was originally asked for the report exactly what they wanted. And what we do with those reports is we share them with everybody, because if that particular customer wants it, well, probably everybody does really, depending obviously on what they're doing. Okay. In terms of other functionality, probably the last thing really I'm going to show you is the ribbon. So this varies depending on which version of Office you're using. Sometimes if you've got one of the older versions of Access Runtime that you're opening Aerotrac in, there'll be like a little arrow box down here on the right hand side which you can click and open and shut. Because I'm on Office 365 or 2016, essentially you'll see it here in the top instead. And there's just a few functions in here. One of the main ones is change password. So if you need to change your password, you can simply go into here. It'll ask you to put in your existing password and obviously then create a new one. You don't worry about the PIN numbers. That's for people who are using some of the more advanced functions that are web-based. That's just your password changes. Okay. One of the other things as well, we've got an internal request system. If you're using it, you can send messages to each other, requesting people to do things. That's part and parcel of the status board function. There's a notes library, which I showed you a little bit earlier on. So when you're doing the purchase orders, you can just, the notes library can get very, very messy if it's not carefully controlled. So we tend to restrict who has access to being able to add notes, but common phrases and things can be added basically into the notes library, depending on whether it's a finance function or it's materials or it's MRO or it's applicable to absolutely everything. Finally, and probably well, you can access the reports from here. That's quite handy sometimes, because if you're in a screen and you don't want to come out of it and go back to the main menu, if you just open up the ribbon, you can access the reports in through there. So it's quite handy for that. But we also have this thing called ribbon setup. I mentioned before about drill downs and shortcuts. We've run out of space on certain screens. It's impossible for us to put drill downs and shortcuts to everything that everybody might want to go to from a particular screen. So that's the purpose of the ribbon setup here. It's actually an admin function, but you can do it yourself, and it's only affecting you. It's not affecting any of the other users. But let's say, for example, I'm in the component log, and I want to create from the component log a drill down, or a shortcut rather, to let's say workshop projects. The way I can do that is I can go edit and then say, sorry, done that wrong. What I need to do is select it up here, beg your pardon. So what I do is I go up here and I select whatever screen I want to create the shortcut from. So I'll do my component log. And then what I'll do down here, if I go edit, is say I want to create a shortcut to the workshop projects. Now, you might see absolutely every single screen in here, but if you don't have access to it, it will say, sorry, you don't have access to this screen. Okay. So if I save that, yeah, that will give me access from there. Now, if I go to the component log, which is in materials, component log, and you'll notice now, if I open the home screen up here at the top, I should have, sure enough, a shortcut to the workshop project screen. So basically create your own shortcuts and effectively drill downs. Yeah. There's a refresh drop down function. I was talking before about refreshing information. A common one these days, you're in a purchase order, you go to add a part number, the part number doesn't exist in Aerotrac. Typically what you'd have to do is you have to stop, save the purchase order, go out of it, create the part master, go back in, edit the purchase order, add the part master. Don't need to do that now. You can just drag the purchase order to the right hand side or wherever, go to part masters, add the part master, go back to here and hit refresh drop downs. And what that will do is it will update the database and you'll be able to select that part number. So effectively it allows you to be able to create stuff on the go without having to lose everything. Okay. And finally, last but not least, help. So we all need a bit of this, certainly me. The idea of the help screen here is that if you've got your own set of discrete manuals or documents that will help you work out your processes and map out how you're supposed to be doing things, you can put them all in here. So there's a place basically where you can set paths up to all the different documents that you might want to control. But on top of that, we've also got in the top left hand corner an online help section, and this is open to anybody who's using Aerotrac. So if you click on it, it will just simply open up and take you to the Aerotrac online help support screen. And in there we now have a thing called InfoBot, which is basically designed to help you just ask questions. Okay. So if I go into here and say, how do I create an MRO quote? And what are they? So you just ask it like you would anything else. And basically it's just using AI intelligence to come back and hopefully tell you that to create an MRO quote, you can follow the steps outlined, blah, 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 blah. And then there are links from there to manuals that explain how these things work. Okay, so sometimes you have to be a little bit quirky or clever about how you ask the question. The InfoBot, it gets more intelligent as it grows along. So it's obviously one of the things that worries people about AI, but it is self-educating, shall we say. So the more information and the more people that use the infobot, the quicker. Apologies for the fact you still got JSSI in there, so let's get rid of that quick. But yeah, so the infobot is here, but also on the left-hand side is actually all the various different manuals that the infobot will also reference. So, for example, whenever we do an update to Aerotrac, you'll see the full change history. So here's all the historical changes that we made in all the different versions in Aerotrac. We've also got, where we made major changes to the system in certain versions, we'll write guide notes that explain what these are. So, for example, in 2801, we introduced a brand new thing called supplementary task cards to all the aircraft maintenance and continuing airworthiness management organizations. So that might be something of interest to them. And there'll be a detailed set of explanations as to what that is. And then also we've got infrastructure configuration, which is that's how you roll Aerotrac out, more for the admin IT people. System maintenance, so if you need to do maintenance, again, IT and admin. And then probably the main one really is the using the system. So we're trying to grow this all the time in terms of knowledge. There's obviously general tips and tricks, a lot of which is just what I'm talking about now. But also then we've got literally functional stuff on how to do things in the administrative setup. So how do we go about setting fleet details? How do we do aircraft component, engine cycles and life formulas? And then there's like detailed books that basically explain how we do all this, that, and the other. So detailed guides on all sorts of things. And the infobot will take you to them generally if you kind of frame the question in the right way. I found that it's grown more and more intuitive as we've gone along, and usually hits the spot in terms of finding out what you want to do. So always start with the infobot. If it doesn't really give you what you want, then just maybe take a look in this using the system bit. And obviously these are all linked to either the admin module or the main application itself, which is all down into here. It's not exhaustive, not by any means. Aerotrac is a vast product, so we've not managed to write guides on everything, but we are doing our absolute level best to do it. And we're trying to update the information all the time and keep it as current as we can in relation to the version. Okay, so yeah, a really useful feature just in relation to that. Okay, one kind of last bit. I mean, that's it in terms of the navigation and how to find your way around Aerotrac. Probably the last bit I'll just do is just go through some of the more esoteric things that you may or may not be aware of. One of the most popular ones is that people are probably under the illusion that Aerotrac comes in grey, 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 or grey. But in actual fact, there is an option within the admin module in the user setup to be able to change the background color. So if you want to do pink, purple, yellow, blue, green, teal is quite popular amongst the customer base. You can just change it. You can just change it there. I mentioned about changing the screen. You can do that if you've got access to C program files Aerotrac or program files x86 Aerotrac. In there, you'll find a file called menu background.jpg. You can just change it there. Obviously, as I say, if there's a corporate image, that'll probably just overwrite it. So whatever you put in there, you come in the next time you log into Aerotrac, it will just overwrite it. So, but yeah, it's there if you want it. I mentioned about the database administrator tool. This is really quite techie, shall we say. So I won't go overboard on it. But yeah, there is a tool in here where this database administrator function here, if I log into it, and you'll see here I can just create a copy. So if I want to create a copy of my demo database, I can just literally hit create copy and it will build a whole new database copied on that. That's one thing to bear in mind about the test company, by the way. The test company is just a snapshot of the company at a certain point in time. If it was done 3 weeks ago, then the data doesn't update or change. It literally is just a snapshot of the data at that particular instant. So if you had a new purchase order or a project or whatever and go back to it, the test company is not going to reflect that. Okay. So yeah, this is mainly admin tools in here, but yeah, just to show you that this is basically what we use, or what you use, what your administrators use to create new training companies, and that's quite often useful if you're testing something and playing around with something, new functionality, new processes, whatever it may be. You can just use this. Okay, and very quickly, so last thing really, most useful screens in Aerotrac. So three screens really that I always refer to on a very regular basis. Number one is part masters. So obviously that's here in the part configuration. The most important screen in Aerotrac bar none. It is the foundation of the cornerstone of absolutely everything. So obviously most people should have access to that. Not many people should necessarily be able to edit or add stuff. Typically, the part master needs to be very carefully controlled in terms of who has access to what. One thing is that the tabs, the permission is actually controlled to a tab level here. So whoever's doing logistics can have access to supply and issue and reorder locations, but not necessarily anything else. So, and you can do that through the permission screen in relation to what people can and can't get access to. Certainly, if you've got a camo organization, you'd be very protective, I think, of the live details tab and the technical tab. So yeah, that's obviously the part master. Obviously stock details, which we were looking at a bit earlier, one of the most important screens in Aerotrac from an informational point of view, and that tells you, basically what you've got in stock, what you've got in terms of orders and quotes, allocations, movements, and obviously from a drill down point of view, if you click on any of those transactions, it will take you through to there. And then probably the other one, the most useful screen in Aerotrac for me, and the go-to screen, is this materials trace screen here, otherwise known as the part number serial number trace screen, which again, I think I've probably got a shortcut to it here, but that lives right down the bottom of the materials section here, part number serial number trace. And this does a search on any different format, if you like, of part number, serial number, batch number, or any combination of those three. So if I was just to go in and go AS3209-009, you'll see it will just show me all the transactions. And if I click by source, here's all the data transfers where I'm transferring it one house or another. Here's all my stock batches, all the stock adjustments I've done, picking lists over the years. Yeah, the whole kit and caboodle. And it shows a huge number of different transactions, repair orders, process orders, invoices. Yeah, it's a really useful, very powerful screen. A lot more configurable now as well, because you can sort it by customer, by supplier, by warehouse, all sorts. Again, just depending on what you've got switched on and what you haven't. Okay, so that's pretty much it in terms of what I was going to show you. We could go into more detail if you like about all the various different bits in Aerotrac, but to be honest, that's a whole different webinar on its own, really. But I hope that was useful. If anybody got any questions?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. In CRS Aero, we don't have the ribbon at the top.
Yeah, I think you'll probably find that we might just need to log in on TeamViewer, just check and see how your screen looks, if you like. But yeah, as I say, it depends on what version of Microsoft Office you're running and whether you're using the old Access runtime applications. Some people can open it in Access, other people open it in a thing called Access Runtime. And it may be that you've got an older version of Access Runtime, in which case you might find that it's just at the top, but on the right-hand side, there's a little arrow. Don't know if you see it. Otherwise, you maybe just have to send us a screenshot of what you've got, and there, yeah, we'll try and decipher it for you. But it should be in one or the other.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, no worries. Okay. Right. Okay, I'll take it that that's that there are no further questions. All that remains is to say thank you very much for your time. I hope that was useful. And that maybe you've learned something, even if you've been using Aerotrac a long time. There might be a couple of bits in there that just kind of helped out and just gave you a bit of extra insight. So Thanks very much, everybody. Really appreciate your time, and catch you on the next webinar. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Cheers,
Bye.
then. Thanks. Bye.